So let's talk for a second then. You brought it up. I have this question as well about intrinsic motivation and extrinsic motivation and, bribing, chocolate for sitting on the toilet or whatever it may be. So what do you talk a little bit about that intrinsic versus an extrinsic motivation and how you coach clients through that process and what you've seen families have success with?
So I think a lot of the time, parents who are potty training have small, young kids, generally speaking, but they don't even know what parenting style they actually are living out. Sometimes they'll say, I'm ascribing to this method, but when you really talk to them about what their day-to-day life looks like, it looks nothing like. And so people will say, I want to potty train with this method, this way, and I'm going to use either extrinsic or intrinsic motivation. They're not using that word, but they're saying, I'm using M&Ms, or I really want my child to be self-motivated. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so when it comes down to it, I'm like, no, 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 no. Let's talk about how the rest of your life functions.
So I'm here today with Michelle Swaney, who is the founder and CEO of the Potty School, which specializes in guiding families and caregivers through every step of the potty training experience. And Michelle, thank you for being here with us today. I'm very excited to talk to you about this. I think in my initial email to you, I shared on the Weekly Parent, our newsletter, over the last year, we had an article about potty training, and it was the highest clicked article that we have ever had. And in thinking about launching this podcast, I said, we have to talk to someone who talks about potty training, who knows about potty training, who can talk to us about this, because clearly there is something that parents are hungry for, given the interest in this particular article. And so I'm very happy that you agreed to come on and share your experience and expertise with us. And I would like to just jump right in with this question, which I think, for me at least, is one of the most burning questions. And that is, why is potty training so stressful?
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate your time. Why is potty training so stressful? Well, for better or for worse, I do know a lot about it. I would say that it's one of the first. The other one would be feeding an infant, where the whether it's nursing and bottle feeding or physical feeding of food, that they physiologically have the ability to kind of say no to, right? If you're going to rock a baby, they can't really, I mean, they might like push or whatever, but they can't get out of the rocking of the baby. If you want to kiss a baby, they can't physically remove themselves out of the situation. But with food, usually they're old enough that they can like move their mouth out of the way and spit that back in your face. And the same is kind of true with potty training, where it's the first time that they have like the physical ability to say no. And so it's the first time we're really parenting them through a situation where both of us have some ownership and both of us have some leadership in the situation. But it's not just parents leading the way 100%, and it's not kids leading the way 100%. It's really, you got to work with your child, who they are, but then also I really encourage parents to take the lead on.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I love this idea. And I talk a lot, of course, about feeding. And you're right. You're absolutely right. This is where our kids start to assert their independence and their autonomy. And especially with toileting, this is not something that we can control, right? I mean, we have to
No.
learn how to work with our kids through this process. Yeah. So that is I love that this is one of those things where kids can say no to it. So if someone is thinking about beginning this process, toilet training, potty training with their kids, what is something that we should be thinking about, or like what is the thing that you share with parents and caregivers? Here is my advice to you for how to begin.
That's a great question. So the number one question I always get asked is, when do I start? So people are asking for a specific age for all children. That would be the best scenario. And my pushback, I have this in my book as well, is just that if there's not a number. I typically ask parents, like, what culture do you identify with? Just because I'm white doesn't mean I identify with a certain culture in the United States because of how I was brought up. You have no idea how I was brought up. And in consultations, I have no idea how people were brought up or the expectations they have on them. And so maybe they have a grandma who's from a certain country that carries that lineage with her, who's really putting a lot of pressure on mom to do it elimination communication style. Your kid should be out of diapers by 6 months. But then they also have another parent on the other side, or another in-law over there, who's also giving them advice saying, no, 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 just wait till they're ready, wait till they're ready. So if you identify with American typical United States culture overall, what the marketing campaigns are telling us, parents typically wait until their kids at least 2.5 years old. I tend to push people a little bit earlier because I think kids are super capable. And I think there's a lot to be missed when we push back on past generations' abilities to do things and say, no, no, like we'll do it a new way. Well, it's been working for a really long time. Let's focus on what our kids can do instead of what they can't do. So cultural identification is the number one thing that I talk with parents about as far as when to pod.
Okay, yeah. That makes a lot of sense to me as well. And again, something that I spend a lot of time talking about is it's similar in the sense of like really identifying what is it that matters to you, what are your goals, and how can you bring those to this process for me of feeding kids and feeding your family. And here also of in this toilet training experience. I like that idea. Have friends, I have in-laws who will say things like, well, number two is coming or number three is coming. I want to get first baby or second, my older one out of diapers
You're
so that I
talking
don't
to a
have two.
potty
And
training lady. Number one and number two mean different things to me.
oh, you're right. Baby number
I
one,
understand what
baby
you're
number
saying.
two. Yeah. Um, that's so funny. But like I don't want to have two in diapers, and so I'm going to potty train now because this, like, we're hitting this milestone, which seems very externally driven, instead of, I mean, maybe their kids are ready for it. The child that they're interested in toilet training, maybe not. Um, what would you say to someone who's thinking, well, I have this external motivation, another baby on the way, so I'm going to do this now. Is that worthy of pursuing? Are there other signs we could look for with our kids that they are also ready to join us in this process?
Two sides of the coin because I have a lot of families and I have consultants as well who have consultations with someone who has a kiddo who's 5 years old, 6 years old, 7 years old. And they said, we didn't want to push them. We didn't want to push them. We didn't want to push them. But we paid for this private school and have a deposit, and they will not take them in first grade if they're not potty trained. They will not take them. What's the difference between that and they will not take them in preschool? So all of a sudden, middle of August, all these clients come in saying, we want our kid potty trained yesterday. We waited and waited and waited and let them have it be on their time, but now it's on our timeline. So whether
Hmm.
that's at age 5.5 or that's at age 1.5, it's almost always the same external motivator that ends up happening, whether it's a time constraint or it's a personal constraint where husband or, co-parent tells you like, enough is enough. I don't want to have that kid in my house if they're in a diaper. Like, let's get it done. So it's almost always an external constraint that is
Okay.
what is
Yeah.
motivating us to do it, whether or not we admit it. Now, how you potty train and how you incentivize, whether that's internal or intrinsic or extrinsic, that's a whole other conversation. But as far as the external motivation, I think it's totally valid, and I think it happens kind of no matter what. It's just a matter of whether you're recognizing that's happening at an earlier age or at an older.
Fair, that's fair. That's very fair. Actually, bringing up that point. And my kids were at a preschool where you had to be toilet trained in order to go. And so, yeah. Um, so let's talk for a second then. You brought it up. I have this question as well about intrinsic motivation and extrinsic motivation and, bribing chocolate for sitting on the toilet or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
My middle, so I have a girl, boy, girl.
Mm-hmm.
My son, my middle and my youngest are 18 months apart. And my son just really didn't show interest in toilet training at all. And I likely missed signs that he was ready. But I was busy with a third. That's my excuse anyway. But when the time came, finally, I said, okay, I really think that you can do this, buddy. And we talked about it. He was probably 2.5 or 3. If I'm thinking about that correctly. We were staying at my parents' house for the summer. My husband was abroad doing research. And we finally got to a point, my dad said, Oliver, when you're ready for this, you can pick out a toy. And that, when you are done with diapers, we'll get you that toy. And he loved having his play mower, mowing the lawn with dad. And so he picked a little plastic toy hedge trimmer, and that is what he wanted. And when he identified that, it was just like, that's it. Great. I'm ready. Show me the toilet. And he just did it. We had very different experiences for my others, but we never used the, M&Ms for sitting on the toilet kind of, yeah. So what do you talk a little bit about that intrinsic versus an extrinsic motivation and how you coach clients through that process and what you've seen families have success with?
When I started, I thought I knew everything. So I told people, I taught classes and I said, this is how you do it. And then people would leave the classes and they would have more questions than they started with. And I realized classes are this helpful, but being able to actually get information from families ahead of time is so much more helpful. For example, I went to a home consultation, and as I was getting the lay of the land and everything at their home, there's this Costco-sized, gigantic, humongous bag of M&Ms. And I was like, that's interesting. Because as I'm talking to the gentleman, he's eating really, really healthy food. And then as we're talking kiddos eating breakfast, and dad is weighing protein and carbohydrates to make sure he's getting a balanced diet. And then he finishes eating and he weighs it to figure out how much he had actually consumed. And then there's a bag of M&Ms on the counter. So he's like, well, I got these so we could potty train. And I was like, hold up, wait a minute. Everything in your life, in very first glance, says you've never eaten an M&M in your life, nor do you want your child to eat any. So we do not need to use M&Ms. And he's like, okay, well, maybe raisins. And I'm thinking, well, no, but that's not how your family functions. So I think a lot of the time, parents who are potty training have small, young kids, generally speaking, and unless special needs, which we work with older kids as well, but they don't even know what parenting style they actually are living out. Sometimes they'll say, I'm ascribing to this method, but when you really talk to them about what their day-to-day life looks like, it looks nothing like that. And it's fine. It's usually a nice conglomeration of all the different parenting methods they've heard of or lived, or their spouse or their significant other has lived, or just things they saw at a park that they thought worked well. And so people will say, I want to potty train with this method this way, and I'm going to use either extrinsic or intrinsic motivation. They're not using that word, but they're saying, I'm using M&Ms, or I really want my child to be self-motivated. And so when it comes down to it, I'm like, no. Let's talk about how the rest of your life functions. So if your kiddo comes home and they drew this really great picture, how do you celebrate that success? Most parents don't give that child an M&M. Most parents give them a hug, a high five, words of affirmation. So they don't say, oh my gosh, when you make 6 of these pictures, if they're this good, or you get even more in the lines, then we can go pick out a Barbie. Like, that's not typically how we interact with little kids. So it's so odd to me that the system we put in place was like handing them pieces of candy to do something that biologically, like, they've been doing their whole lives. All we are actually doing is asking them to move from point A to point B. It's not that big of a deal. And I say that with years of experience now. And my company is almost 10 years old, and I've had children for longer than that. And just realizing that we are making such a big deal out of it because diapering companies make so many billions of dollars off of this. They turn it into this giant parent-kid struggle when really any success your kid makes is a time to celebrate with them. And so, like, let's just make this a celebratory, fun process. But a lot of parents don't even know what that looks like. Like, for home consultations, we need to exemplify and model. Here's an activity. Here's how we respond in an affirmative way. Or we'll play red light, green light. So here's an obedience game. So something like that where we're encouraging and teaching them what it looks like to kind of model for their children successes, and how in our family we kind of get excited when you have a success.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. I love that idea too, that, our kids want to do this, like you said, the hug, the high five, the recognition that they have done something themselves. That, that is often enough. That's what they're seeking. They
I
don't
think you need
need.
to like stop for 1 second and listen to what you just said, because I completely said this to families too. Like, you are enough. Like, as a parent, you are enough to parent your kid. You don't need M&Ms and M's and sticker charts.
Love that. Oh, I had not thought about that. I really like that message. You've sort of talked about this, and I feel like you've said several things, and I'm going to frame this question in a negative, and I'd like to think about how to frame it in a positive instead. But my question that I was going to ask you is like, what do most of us get wrong, when we're going through this process? But I don't like that that's a negative question. And so I wonder if instead we could ask, like, how can we rephrase that in a positive? Like, what
Do
could,
this right.
Yeah, like how can we focus on what is something that we can do that we could focus on that would be really moving us in the right direction, right? And think about it as a positive, just like you said, affirming ourselves. We've got this. We can do this. We have the tools we need. Here's one thing we can do during this process to feel better about it and to feel more confident in our ability to move our kids through this, because all kids move through this, at their own speed and rate. But kids move through this, and we as parents, we will figure out how to help them.
I think a lot of parents' decision to potty train as far as when to start is very guilt driven. And so when you come in feeling like you're already behind, you try to rush to catch up. So when you
Mm.
get pregnant, even if you're 3 months pregnant and you don't find out until then, and you only have 6 months, you're still gonna learn. You're still gonna notice people's bellies when you walk around. You're still gonna notice that friend who has a baby shower, what she put on her registry. Like, you're gonna pay attention for 6 months before your child comes. For potty training, it's almost backwards. Like, you decide you're gonna start potty training your kid, and you start this weekend. Like, there's no lead
Mm.
time, there's no education. And as much as I'd like to say that we have these huge, highly functional families that all teach each other great things and stay in contact, it's not happening. Like, we have very small families. We don't have families, even if you have 3 kids, right? Like, I have 3 kids. We don't have 12 siblings in the family. We don't have aunts and uncles living on the same property. We don't have grandmas who have nothing to do but potty train the child. We don't have those resources in our lives. And as moms, I feel like especially, we're really pressured into feeling like you just know, trust your intuition. Well, the reason people in past generations trusted their intuition was because they were educated for 15 years of their lives. Sure, they maybe got married and had children young, but they had in-home, in-depth education on all things domestic. That is not the experience I had. I went to
Mhm.
a university. I went through an honors program. I went and traveled the world. I had all these experiences that are so valuable and so great. But when it came time, for example, to nurse, like, I had a really, really tough time, and I called in that lactation consultant six
Mhm.
million times. So
Mhm.
just because you're strong in one area doesn't mean you're necessarily going to fail in another area. But as far as the timeline goes, like, if you come in guilt driven and uneducated, it's just a very poor spot to start. So I think what we can do is educate families and have them learn before they start. Even if it's just a couple days before they start, it is what it is, right? Life with a toddler is crazy, but getting a little educated, getting a little bit of a plan, getting on the same page as your co-parent, it's probably the first time as a family you really had to form a plan together, because both of you are going to end up implementing it. And that can cause a lot of havoc if you're not on the same page, especially with the
Abs-
extrinsic, intrinsic motivation.
yes, absolutely. Those kinds of conversations with caregiving partners, so critical. And yeah, I mean, and it just continues. My oldest is 16. So, the kinds of conversations my partner, my husband, and I have had to have around driving. I mean, it doesn't end, right? That
Right.
this getting on the same page about something, having those difficult conversations. This is what it was like for me. This is what it was like for me. And how are we going to make decisions as a pair, as partners here in this? Um, so in thinking about that and being able to educate ourselves a little bit before we start this process, certainly working with a consultant, and I'd like to ask you to wrap up this answer in talking about what it's like to work with a consultant and how people could find you, for example, or your team. But what are some other trusted resources that parents could turn to or that you share with parents, to begin to think about this? How do we have these conversations? What kinds of conversations do we need to be having? What kinds of considerations do we need to be making? How can we start thinking about what potty training is going to look like in our house? So some trusted resources that parents can turn to, of course, including your website, your team, and then how does a potty training consultant work with families generally? What does that kind of look like?
In the best case scenario, you would have someone in your family to turn to. So I would say family, number one, turn to people that you trust, who you feel like you'd be comfortable having your naked child in front of potty training. So if that's a mom or a sister or a brother or an uncle, whatever, whoever that safe person is for you and your child, that would be number one. Number two, I would say any sort of like community that you're in. So whether that's a mom's group, it's a parenting group, it's a dad's group, it's a church group, it's whatever environment you surround yourself with, I would look to those trusted people and see, okay, maybe someone has a couple more kids who are older than mine. Check those bottoms for diapers and kind of ask, what did you do? And I think that's reasonable, a good place to start. And in a perfect world, my job wouldn't exist. People wouldn't need outside help. Like I don't, I don't push my services on anybody, to be perfectly honest. Like we're often get called and people will say, you're my last ditch effort. I was like, oh, I love hearing that because at least you tried, right? You gave an effort. And so when I'm the last ditch effort or our consultants are last ditch effort, it usually means that someone is very willing to try what we have to say because we have a lot of experience and they want to know, like, okay, here's my situation. Tell me what to do in this situation. And that's exactly where we want someone to be. And often in those friendly and community conversations, people are not that open. And so that's the joy. It's kind of like talking to someone on the plane where you're like, I can share my life story with you, or I can hear your life story, and we're never going to interact again. So it's a safe split space. Like we have often signed like non-disclosure agreements with, more high profile clients because they don't want anyone knowing that they asked for help with potty training. And we don't use people's names unless they tell us, I'm happy to write a review. I'm happy to put my name up. But this is a safe, confidential environment. And I think just knowing that whatever they share with us isn't public, it's not going on social media, it's not going to go in their HR file. Like they can just be who they are. A lot of the time people cry. A lot of the time people bring on some other outside person, whether it's a nanny or it's a, ex-husband who it doesn't even live in the same location. Like they're just trying to bring their team together for the sake of their kid. So that's kind of the part that we take. So as far as working with a consultant, it's really not that hard. It's a matter of kind of, I need help, right? And it's just saying like, oh, I didn't learn how to do this. I need to be educated on how to help out my kid. I'm the best person who knows my kid, but maybe someone can help guide me, given what I know, how to tweak my path a little more. So we do basically you go online, you pick a date, you schedule, you pay for your consult, you fill out an intake questionnaire, the consultation happens. We give a little bit of lead time on that, but not much. So our consultants do a lot of consultations and it's ages 0 through, for the sake of argument, we'll say 17 years. And because that's where we also work with a lot of special needs kids. But it's phone or Zoom, so the modality that you most prefer, and then also in home. So that means someone will hop on a plane and show up on your doorstep and help you out through that process. And we are parent coaches, so I'm not wiping your child's bottom. Sorry to let you know that. We are telling you how to, because I used to do that, and I used to be all hands on, and I would potty train the child, but then I would leave, and there'd be this wake of I don't know what to do behind me. And I felt like I really did the family a disservice. I was like, no, I need to empower you so that you are the face of potty training success. And I'm just like literally sometimes whispering in someone's ear. Now, that sounds a little creepy, but like,
No, but I get it. Yeah. Here's what to try. Say this. Yeah. Just giving you the
tone it down a
tools.
little bit. Let's be a little bit more positive. This can be fun. Like I know there's a mess, but it can be a game. So just encouraging them and just having someone there to be accountable with you is really helpful. So we'll also do virtual consultations where it's a couple check-in calls throughout the day if that's somebody's preference as well. But it's not, I feel like in this day and age, phone and Zoom like are so normal to everyone. And then home is if someone really wants to up their game, they're like, I just want that support. I want a person here to encourage and support me more than necessarily your child needs it. They want to know that they're doing the right thing and that they're on the.
Yeah. It's interesting. One of the things I heard in your answer there is that this is an emotionally charged time for parents, which makes so much sense. And it's so sad to hear, the need or the interest or the desire for anonymity in the sense that I don't want to be judged for what this experience for me is like. And that's really too bad because we all go through it and we all have our moments of doubt. And if it's not toilet training, it's something else, like we're all in this together. It's too bad that there has to be that concern that there would be that kind of judgment, but I understand it, unfortunately, but
We had
yeah.
a trail of behavioral therapist clients for a while. And after about 5, I asked, I was like, did you hear about the potty school somewhere. Like, oh yeah, this speaker mentioned, like kind of just dropped it in a large session in basically a giant convention for behavioral therapists. And over the course of 6 months, like clients just kept rolling in and rolling in. And it wasn't just people at that conference. It was the friend of the friend of the friend of the friend who had
Wow.
heard about it. They were trained in ABA therapy. They were trained in how to potty train in the United States, right? I have learned those methods, and I have learned a lot of other methods, and I have decided not to go through getting a certificate or signing on the dotted line, because I feel like that's, again, a disservice to the families to say, I will teach you how to do something one way because it's the best method. Again, it's that cultural identification. I love learning how different cultures potty train. Like, it is so fascinating to me. It's usually not potty training, it's elimination communication, and it's a community affair, and people get it done quickly, and it's not stressful, and it's not a 3 day in a row compacted, all of a sudden we're changing your world. It's just an ongoing part of life. And then
Yeah.
there aren't diapers to deal with, there aren't ongoing expenses. But then there's the flip side, where some countries, such as Saudi Arabia is one, where kids used to get out of diapers, cloth diapers, very, very quickly. And now it's a sign of affluence if your child's in disposables. So that's an environmental faux pas. But it's just
Yes.
so interesting to see how different countries get marketed to in different ways. Like in Japan, one of the marketing messages there is your child will sleep better, therefore they will be more intelligent, therefore they will be more productive in society. So really the end goal
Wow.
is that you want a productive child in society who goes with the flow. And how you're going to get there is by giving them better sleep. And how you're going to give them better sleep is by buying X brand of diapers. So
Wow.
it's just interesting to go back through the psychology of each one of those countries that I've learned about, of how different marketing campaigns happen. I used to work in
Yeah.
marketing, so it's extra fascinating to me.
I mean, um, if someone wanted to learn more about you and the Potty School, where can we find information about you?
It's definitely the best resource. That's where you can do booking as well. It's thepottyschool.com, not party school, potty school. And then also social media, all the handles are at the potty school. So that
Great.
is
I
us,
will.
Go ahead.
Super. Well, I was just going to say, I'll make sure that we link to all of that in show notes so it's documented and everyone can find you.
Great.
Um,
The book title too is The Complete
yeah,
Guide to Potty Training. So that's by Michelle D. Swaney. That's me. They can go to the Potty School /resources/supplies.
great. Excellent. And I'll have a link directly to that as well.
Thank you.
Um, anything I didn't ask? Anything else that you feel like I have to make sure your audience leaves knowing this?
Yes. I'd love the audience to know that we really care about kids in general. Like, this isn't all about the money. It really is about helping families try and communicate with their kids. And part of that includes kids that have special needs. And I think that's a very forgotten, pushed to the side. And we talk about guilt and embarrassment levels. And let me tell you, these parents of special needs kids experience that 100 times over what neurotypical families experience. So that is a passion of mine and of our business as well, is to have, we've hired people with so much experience going into special needs that trump my experience in certain regards as well, to really be able to provide consultants that match with the families that we are providing services.
Yeah, excellent point. Thank you for bringing that up. I did notice several of your consultants have that specifically in there for neurotypical and atypical development. That's a great point. All right, Michelle, thank you so much.
Nice to meet
I
you. It's fun.
Yeah, you too. Thanks for hanging out with me on The Weekly Parent. If something you heard today made you think, laugh, or feel just a little more human, don't be shy. Subscribe, text it to your BFF or group chat, or leave us a review. Remember, you'll find free tools, downloads, and whatever else I've cooked up this week in the show notes. Check those out. Parenting is messy. Let's not do it alone. See you next time.